Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Into the Battlefield, a discussion on war literature. Another week has passed, the weekend begins, and here we are with another video. Today, we will be deep diving, dissecting, and decoding war literature, the portrayal of war, the portrayal of never ending battles, human misery, bloodshed, loss of life, and so on. And with joining me is the band of brothers. We have our constant panelist, Abhinav Bhattacharya, joining us all the way from Bangalore.
Hi,
Hello, Abhinav. How are
sir. All good.
you? And also joining Abhinav is my ex-classmate and my childhood friend, Anubhav Bhattacharya, the other brother. Hello, Abhinav.
Hey
Hello,
Akash.
Anubhav. Sorry.
Hey Akash. I'm good.
Uh,
Good to be here back again and looking forward to this.
Absolutely. So it's like a mini reunion for me, Abhinav, Anubhav. So let's
So,
begin. Abhinav, I'd like to begin with you. Tell us about your journey. How did your journey with war literature begin? Do you remember the first novel on war that you read? And can you tell us a bit about it?
Akash, the perfect timing for this episode, I would say, because at this particular moment in time, which will soon become history, India and especially the Indian Army is, flexing its muscles in the borders with China, are not that
Yeah,
quintessential.
absolutely.
So it's quite an interesting episode. And one of the first novels I ever read in my wee years as a schoolboy was an Alistair MacLean classic, HMS Ulysses, based on a strategic naval warfare during the Great War, of course. I happened to read a few more after that. For YA category, he wrote YA meaning young adult category. He wrote a lot of quintessential books exploring different angles of the Great War. War, again, like mystery or crime fiction as a genre, is another which intrigues the reader in its own way. And especially it's because it's not common, right? Neither is war or crime or mysteries that common in your regular life. So that's what clings to the particular reader, and the author exploits it in a positive way. And Joseph Heller's again, Catch 22 is a special mention here. It's a satirical war novel, not necessary that the author have to bring out violence or any aspect of violence to demonstrate war. So Tolstoy's War and Peace is another classic for all times, and that's
Yeah.
again there. So these are the three quintessential books which started my journey into this particular genre.
Okay. Thank you, Abhinav, for sharing your insights on this particular on how it began for you. Anubhav, I'd like to come to you for this. How did it begin for you? Do you remember the first war book on war that you read, or was it from the People's Bookstall? By any chance?
yeah, you, I think, like hit the nail on the head rather with that because, like, for me, it was actually not a novel. I actually started out with a comic. So it was called Commandos for Action and Adventure. So, and we got that from People's Bookstall back in Jorhat. So that's our really, favorite borough to go to and get books from there, right? And it's kind of
Yeah.
like a weekly or a daily like event of sorts, like where we go and get a book from there, right? So I started off with, so for me it was Commandos, and it's like 68 pager black and white comic strip with only the front and the back cover would be in colors. And it was
Yeah.
amazing because what really stood out is like back then, like you could not picture like what actually happened in a war, right? What happens, like battles and the details of it, right? So these comics in itself were very, very were exciting to read through as well, and real page turners and individual stories and moments of brilliance, right? So I really enjoyed
Yeah.
those. And actually, a shout out goes to Anurag Sangma. So he was a classmate, remember? So he used to do amazing sketches, right, of battle maps, tanks, artillery, armies, right? So
Yeah.
those were quite colorful memories indeed. But yeah, I think like it all started with People's Bookstall, and yeah, for me it was Commandos comics.
Anubhav, it's amazing you brought up the mention of Anurag Raktin Sangma, our
Yeah,
beloved classmate from Carmel, who used to draw war scenes, battle scenes, artillery, ammunition, people shooting rockets and people dying, people being killed.
yeah,
I mean, that guy was an amazing artist, and he used to do this at the back of his notebook and sometimes at the back of
yeah,
the question paper. And yeah, Special shout out to you, Anurag Sangma. You're a great artist. Always were, will always be. Uh, and Abhinav, coming to you. Abhinav, tell us a bit about your favorite war novel or and your favorite war novelist. One particular novel and a novelist whose work has stayed with you over the years.
Yeah, there are a lot actually. I have to mention a couple. So, J.G. Ballard's The Empire of the Sun is one of my favorite. Also, Lu, Gongzhong's, Romance of the Three Kingdoms is a 14th century historical novel. Another classic. It's exactly set in the, turbulent years towards the end of the Han Dynasty in China, and the Three Kingdoms, as we call it, or the Three Kingdoms, the period itself in Chinese history is important for starting in 69 AD and ending with the reunification of China, or the formation of China of the land in 280 AD. So that was
Yeah.
something quite interesting, because not just as a book, it was quite an important book that laid the platform for a very infamous game these days, which is almost hitting the entire Steam or the gaming populi in a very magnanimous manner. So it's a huge game nowadays. And also, Schindler's Ark by Australian novelist Thomas Keneally is another special mention here. It's a Booker Prize winning historical fiction novel published around 1982. So 1982 it was published, and this novel tells the story of Oscar Schindler, self-made entrepreneur and bon voyeur, who almost by default found himself, saving Polish lives, especially Polish Jewish lives, from
Yeah.
the Nazi, war machine or death machine, as we call it, during the Holocaust. So that was quite quintessential for me. These two particular books and the novelists.
Abhinav, you rightly mentioned about Empire of the Sun and Schindler. These two events were adapted into really prominent movies in Hollywood by the same filmmaker, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Empire of the Sun was an amazing movie. It starred Christian Bale as a kid who was lost in a camp. And Schindler's List is, I mean, I don't have words to describe this film, like Liam Neeson saving lives and portraying the role of a real life hero. And we'll discuss this later. Before that, let me get in your younger brother on this. Your favorite war novel or novelist, or both, Anubhav.
Okay, cool. So for me, it has to be Alistair MacLean. So his books are the only ones that I have actually read thoroughly. Like I've actually revisited a few of his, especially the one Abhinav mentioned, HMS Ulysses, right? And specifically for his, like the ones he has written, I think Guns of Navarone really stand out for me. Not just because of the story itself, but because of how it was adapted into a movie, and it starred Gregory Peck, right? So, like as I said, like as a kid, as a teenager, like you could only visualize and think about like what actually went on in the war and what the battles were about, right? But how Alistair did it, like he made things really visceral in how he depicted them, and you could really feel the intensity, the suspense, and the strategy that goes into all the attacks and individual battles, right? So for me, that was really like the way he writes it is brilliant, and it's like the narrative in itself is worth like commending. So yeah, for me, it's Alistair MacLean.
Thank you so much for sharing your list of favorites with us. Abhinav, I'd like to ask you a question which you might be able to answer since you're a novelist yourself. Tell us about the clash between creative liberty and staying true to facts and history while writing a war novel. The clash between creative liberty and the fact of staying true to facts when you are writing about a real life event of a magnanimous scale, like say World War One or World War Two or the Civil War or the Cold War. How do you see this?
Extremely essential point, Akashdeep. Well, fiction being fiction is untrue, but many a times, authors exploit it in different levels. That's the art of it. But my worry always has been not just the clash between creative liberty, but also that due to English as a global medium of expression, Western novels have flogged this genre for many years now, I believe. And the advent of the two world wars made Europe and America quite popular in terms of war tourism, there is a concept around war tourism via such literature. Interesting point to note here: there are very few books written about the British Indian Army uh, of
Yeah.
pre-independence time before the 1947 Declaration of Independence, which was invariably involved as early as the First World War, because they were always there and fought in Africa too. So the volumes of literature here is considerably less, and not many new books have popped up recently in this category. Defeat into Victory, by an account of the retaking of Burma by the Allied forces during the Second World War by the British Field Marshal William Slim, is an essential book here in this category, in this particular domain as well. Also, there are a few books on flying the hump, which is nothing but the Eastern Himalayas, wherein the mention of the quintessential Stilwell Road, the Northeast Frontier Province, related, aerial reconnaissance missions and gritty battles which took place during the Second World War, including the invincible, Chindits were even mentioned. I would say that book in particular is quite great, and I believe there's a lot of scope here for future, in the future, in the near future, for budding authors to consider writing about it, because there is a huge aspect of the war when it comes to normal literature, and especially Western literature. The wars always exist in Europe or in America, so it has to flow otherwise as well. And maybe there are a lot of regional language literature which gets negated because English being a global language doesn't come out well. So that's again there, and that's my take. I mean, I would say it would be great if people considered literature to be a global medium in terms of war, and really told those untold stories of war, which I think it will be great to read through for a reader.
Okay. Anubhav, what are your views on this? The clash between creative liberty and staying true to facts and history while writing a novel on war.
Right. So yeah, I mean, the question in itself, right? When we start out, right, fact and fiction, right? That's what differentiates between what is the truth and what is something that's out of your imagination, right? And with war,
Absolutely.
like the crazy part of that is the fact that there were actual photographers during the war taking photos when people are
Yeah.
shooting, sniping, bayonets are being used, right? And artillery is falling, and they're people who are just taking photographs. So that's the crazy
Yeah.
aspect of things, right? So uh, here, like I think two cases comes into play here, right? If it's a biography or if it is like a fiction novel, I think they both deserve to be told. So because
Yeah.
the narrative in itself, like what they talk about, individual moments of bravery and determination in itself, right? And I think when they take the creative liberty, what happens is they spin their own mystery, chaos, and the strategy and the attacks, how they happen, what happens next. So that's how I think they can make it page turners as well. So for me, like whether it's like a biography, as I said, or of someone like who's actually had firsthand experience in the war, recalling that is a big deal. Like for someone to tell that untold story, right? And if it comes to fiction, especially, I think Ken Follett does a good job as well. I mean, his novels are like
Yeah.
this thick, and like you'll think like it's too much. Like, why is he writing that? But they're really gripping and real page turners for me. So yeah, I think like that creative liberty is essential, and then like facts, you need to like include that because that's what makes up the entire story.
Thanks, Anubhav, for giving us your perspective and bridging the gap between creative liberty and facts. Fact
Yeah,
fiction, walking contradiction. Thank you so much.
yeah,
Abhinav, next question is about the adaptation of war into movies. War literature has been adapted into various TV shows and films worldwide, and they enjoy tremendous fan following.
Mhm.
How do you see this? Like, I do you like enjoy watching them on screen, or do you just like reading them? Or do you have any favorites among those?
What is intriguing to watch, I tell you. I mean, it's so wonderful. I don't know why. It's sometimes depicting only violence, but then because maybe it's quite uncommon a genre, I really prefer watching it. Uh, it's essential to show the truth or to the construction of the same. So J.J. Abrams, the Empire of the Sun, as you had mentioned, Akashdeep, that has been in cinema for a long time. Schindler's List again
Yeah,
has been up there in IMDb in terms of rating as well for very long, up there. and based on
Yeah.
Miller's arc again by Thomas Kenneally. So, and again, as Anubhav had mentioned, uh, Guns of Neveron by Alistair MacLean and Forced In from Neveron. So these two were two quintessential books which have been depicted really well in cinema, and they're really thrilling movies. You generally watch a movie which is adaptation from a book doesn't
Yeah.
become so comprehensive. You don't really like watching it. But these two were really intriguing movies as well. They're really well casted, and of course, not only does the cast, I think the direction was perfect. And these are difficult movies to do. Uh,
Yeah.
they were trying to show the eagle's nest, what they call, where actually is the HQ of Hitler, the quintessential chancellor then of Germany for the Third Reich, or those particular angles, or the mountainous terrain which they had to show. That was quite crazy, considering they didn't have the technology back then when they were trying to do those two movies. Were quite good. And Band of Brothers and Pacific were great, captures to integral areas of the Great War. Basically, the entire Pacific drama that's shown in the Pacific, wherein the entire the Eastern Zone, the war of the Eastern Zone, and in Band of Brothers they completely go into mainland Europe and show the war there.
Yeah.
Quite well captured again, and interestingly, Band of Brothers is based on a book by the prolific American historian Stephen E. Ambrose, who compiled the story from extensive interviews with veterans of the Easy Company, the Airborne 506th Regiment. So that was quite well covered. So this was quite brilliant that it finally took shape of a very great series, which just has 10
Yeah.
episodes, right? Very easy to watch and quite great, I would say, cinematography and everything. Louis D. Brenner's Captain Corellius Mandolin was a brilliant novel again. It's difficult to portray the same in the large screen. Did okay in the box office, starring Penelope Cruz, and it was quite brilliant though. I really liked it because of that connection with the book. Tried to portray. So that's that. I mean, I would say it's very difficult to recreate certain events in history. And I think war as a genre is always very highly rated in the rating websites because of the situation, the perils people go through. Recently, I think we have watched great movies like Dunkirk coming through, or even Greyhound, which is depicting
Yeah.
a naval battle. Imagine the pressure for a producer or a director to do that particular movie to show you boats. So it's quite great though overall. These war movies, especially.
Okay, Anubhav, coming to you on this.
Yeah, so I'll talk it in three parts. So, like with TV shows, documentaries, and then movies, right? So, when it comes
Absolutely,
to
please go
TV
on.
shows, I think Abhinav already talked about, right? Band of Brothers. So, it starred Damian Lewis, and then like it was a star-studded cast all through, right? And it really talked about the details of like the D-Day, the landing at Normandy, and then the push into Germany as well, right? So it was quite crazy, and how it ended finally in Germany, right? So 10 episodes, it was really like there was no room to add anything else. Like it was full of it. Like you really enjoyed the whole experience of it. So I think that they did a good job there as well. Another series that comes to mind is actually the latest one, Rise of Empires Ottoman. So it covers the siege of Constantinople, right? And yeah, so again, mini series, but really to the point, and I think they did a great job there as well. And for me, I think again, like as we said, like the creative liberty comes into this, right? So I have seen the series called Man in the High Castle. So that's like an alternate theory again, where it's based entirely on a big what if. What if like Germany and the Axis won the Second World War, right? So where in
Yeah,
the series they actually show like splitting US between Germany and Japan, and like what happens next kind of thing, right? So yeah, I mean, in terms of like shows, I think they did a really great job there. And if it would be documentary, like I think what I would recommend for anyone who's watching it is World War II in color. So that's on Netflix. It is again like it's full on like documentary with proper facts, and really gives you an account of like what individual moments like really changed the course of the entire war, right? So yeah, documentaries are there. And then for movies, I think Abhinav made a good point with Greyhound as well, right? I think what really stands out is normally what we associate with movies is, right, people will talk about how Germany started the war, D-Day, Pearl Harbor, and then the atom bomb drops, right? But then what we miss out on is like individual moments, or maybe let's say like the concentration camps in itself, right? Or the Atlantic fleet, right? How they supplied the Allied invasion. So I think this was really depicted in Greyhound because it's actually based on C.S. Forrester's book called The Good Shepherd. Not to mistake this with the actual Good Shepherd movie in 2006, which is based on the foundation of the CIA, right? So from C.S. Forrester's this Good Shepherd movie, it was based on the Atlantic Fleet and how they fought with the submarines on their own in their act to really feed the Allied invasion into Germany, right? So that was pretty good. And I think we associate like Tom Hanks with a good few movies of the 90s as well, especially Saving Private Ryan, right? So I could really place him there, and I think he did a very good job with very very minimal budget. So yeah, I mean, for me, that's what stood out. Like individual moments of bravery, skill, determination, and then how even like common people, how they added to the war effort, what they did in themselves, right? So those really stood out for me. So whether that's a small narrative or over the course of the war, how it changed the tide and how it affected human civilization as a whole, right? And for me, like what really like moves me is when I look at this, like we can only imagine like what went on there, right? All the distraction, all the destruction, the lives being lost, right? And yeah, I mean, that's what like I think they have done justice to it, whether it's a movie or a TV show or a documentary. And yeah, I think these small details really make or break a movie or an adaptation of it. And I think on like a final note, like we could really go on with this. Like we have been talking through this a lot, right? I think especially like the
Absolutely.
Indochina War and like the India's effort to the war, right? How it impacted, what we contributed. It's really talked less and less about, and people know very little about it, especially in the Northeast, right? With Assam,
Yeah,
even Kohima as well, and then into Burma, like the entire effort, how that happened. So yeah, perhaps you can revisit that and talk more about that in the future, though.
absolutely. I love that. We should actually do an episode or discussion on the role of Northeast in the World War One, World War Two, and try and discuss and try and bring into the forefront some untold stories. And that brings me to the last question of this discussion. Avinav, tell our viewers, what are you currently reading?
Come at the genre, come at the book. I happen to be latched onto this one for this week. William Dalrymple's quintessential book, Return of a King. It's again about the British East Indian Company, especially, and its sepoys invasion of Afghanistan back in 1839. It's a historical tragedy. Uh, Things didn't go well with the Raj back then, with the whole
Yeah,
plan invasion, and it was really quite well written. And how he writes, especially William Dalrymple's, basic, forte around writing is his dramatis personae, which is perfect. So
yeah.
I am really liking this book, and it's really up there, I would say.
Avinav, I might say quite a coincidence because just yesterday I started reading The Anarchy,
Oh yeah.
also written by William Dalrymple. Yeah,
I think the first few hundred pages of his books is always about dramatis personae, where he took his
yeah,
entire research from. His research
yeah.
so extensive. I've never seen such research before. And there are certain great
Yeah.
books he's written about different, facets of history. And really, this really,
Yeah.
and this is again connected
That is what makes him who he is.
exactly. And this was again connected.
And Anubhav, what are you currently reading?
Art of War by Sun Tzu. Like people think like normally it's about going to be all about like war and fiction, but I think like there's a lot to understand from that book as well. So yeah, I think that's something that I'd recommend for our readers.
Let your plans be as dark and as impenetrable as the night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt.
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. And today is the 5th of September, which happens to be Teacher's Day. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say a thank you to all my teachers who taught me in school, college, university, and also to all those people who taught me different things in life, be it related to life, be it related to music or writing or media or anything else. So happy Teachers Day to each and everyone
Yeah.
who taught me one
Happy
thing or the other.
Teachers Day.
Feelings are similar here as well. Happy Teachers Day. I know.
Yeah.
Have a great day today.
Yes. And that was Into the Battlefield. My name is Akash Barwa. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye.